Hi, this is Brendan Murphy here, and welcome to the Please Do Something podcast. I'm a singer and a songwriter who will be talking to inspiring creative people about how and why they do what they do and some of the lessons they've learned along the way. Thanks for listening. As the four of us prepare to release a brand new album in 2024, I got the chance to sit down with my good friend Greg Canty over a series of episodes and talk about the albums that brought us to this point. Let's get into it.
Brendan Murphy, good to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic, Greg. Fantastic.
Today we're going to be talking about Sugar Island. And I think of all of your albums, this is the one where, my God, there's a big conversation about where you grew up and what was going on at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was the first album where I think we just addressed it. We'd sort of played with it, not played with it, but we'd sort of touched on it on other albums. But this record was just primarily a snapshot of our childhood, myself and Declan's childhood, and the troubles. They were the backdrop to practically every song on the record.
Where did you grow up? Because I'm not sure if we've got into that in detail for the listeners.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in the town of Newry, which is a border town. Oh, in fact, there's a song on Sugar Island called Hometown on the Border. And border towns in Ireland were different than other towns in the north because basically there's people, you know, they were the places that they were the most manned by, the security forces, because obviously there's people, once you jumped ship over into the south, the security force couldn't go there. You know, there really wasn't that much of the south and the north weren't talking that much really when it came to, so there's a lot of people hiding out or doing whatever, just literally a mile or two over the border. The border just outside Newry used to be known as bandit country. The thing about it was very difficult for a security force to police it because there was just loads and loads of back roads and mountain roads and side roads and farm roads. You know, you couldn't put checkpoints on them all. You could put checkpoints in the main roads, but it was the other roads that caused just as much difficulty for those that were trying to sort of keep a lid on things. Yeah, but that was where we grew up. And it got a fair old hammering from both sides, actually, thinking about it. You know, the IRA would be blowing up places and they'd be trying to hit the courthouse or the police station. And sometimes their aim wasn't too good. They'd hit hotels, they'd hit, we were always hoping they'd hit the school, but it never happened, fortunately.
And your mum and dad bringing young children into that world, what was their background? Was there ever an option about, let's get out of here?
There wasn't. I know people now whose parents did have that opinion, and they would have been well within their rights to have had that opinion. Sometimes I wonder why they didn't. My father, he had a business in the north, and I think he just didn't want to start again. You know, he didn't want to have to start up again from scratch. He was a bookie, turf counting, and he'd practice in the town of Rathfriland, which was about 30 minutes away from where we were in Newry. And my mum, she would have been pretty stubborn. You know, she just wouldn't have wanted to leave. Her family were there. A few of them did leave, actually. A few of our sisters left. But I think mum and dad were very proud to be where they were from and just didn't want to move. And having said that, I think that they were very nervous about the kids and who we were hanging out with. And, you know, the house that we lived in, when the garden became nearly a compound, you know, was you couldn't walk the streets. And actually the army and the police didn't want you walking the streets at night. They were trying to isolate. So the spread like this. I remember one time there was a rumour that there was black magic that went around, but really what was happening was security force were trying to scare the kids off the streets. So that what they started doing was like, witches, things, and, fires, and bits of dead animals and all that sort of crack, to try and spread the rumor that there was some sort of cult going on. It was ridiculous. But my mum and dad didn't even need that. They thought it was dangerous enough without any black magic. But you couldn't keep kids safe, really, because they weren't safe. None of us were safe, really. And the security forces literally would be walking past your front door, crawling, on their bellies around your garden in some cases. Helicopters landed in fields behind the house. It was, there was nowhere private, really, back then. And you just get used to it. But we grew up on it. So it seemed normal. But I remember being really defensive about it, I just thought, because people were always looking at you when you weren't there as if like, oh, it must be terrible living where you live, and you felt really defensive about it because we were kids, we had fun.
You lived in that tension. And when you moved away from Newry, when you moved south, did you get to realise how much tension you were really living in the middle of?
Yeah, the first time that happened was when the band started happening, and we were signed to Sony, and really we spent a few years all over Europe. And then when we came back, we had a house in Belfast, and it was still going on then. And Belfast wasn't any better than Newry. And at that time, I started noticing it more, but it didn't really sink in. And I know sounds very odd, until I had my own kids, and I'd walk with them through the streets of Newry. And the streets of Newry today, completely different ball game. It's just like it's walking down the street of any street, in the UK. Really, it's like got all the stores, and there's no evidence of no bombed out buildings. There's no checkpoints, none of that. So it's a great city now, and as all the north is. I remember seeing when they were young, going, wow, on the main street, walking down that street with my 5-year-old son at the time, and going, that's not the street I walked down, or 7-year-old or 10-year-old. I think that more than anything else really allowed, I saw them looking at, but I was looking through Newry. I was looking at the ghost in Newry through their eyes. You know what I mean? When I was standing with them. And that's when it really struck me that I thought, I think I can write about growing up now. I think I could write a lot of songs about that now. So being a father really had a huge impact on me being able to write about being a kid, weirdly enough. Isn't that odd? And also I was a better songwriter at this point, in terms of like my ability to tell a story in 3 minutes. Not that I couldn't do it before, but I definitely had more tools in the arsenal. So I had a couple of things going for me. I had the experience of writing a lot of songs at this point. I also had a lot more craft. We talked in earlier albums. I had met Sharon Vaughan, I had gone to Nashville. It had two impacts on me. It had helped me realize it was better to focus on my own unique viewpoint of the world and my own unique history, and try and write very specifically. And it also gave me a better grounding in just the ability to put words together and to sort of like to tell a story cinematically, if you will, in a song.
And the last album you pushed out at this stage was your own solo record, Walk With Me. Was that getting that monkey off your back, or you scratched that itch, whatever language we use?
Yeah, well, I thought Walk With Me was exactly that, because it was sort of like a bag of songs that I had written in Nashville. A lot of them I'd written in Nashville, but I thought they don't have enough personality. Ironically, it was called the Brent Murphy album, but I thought the next time I make a record, I'm going to make sure that the lyrics couldn't have been written by anybody else. To be really super specific. I sort of thought I knew how I could do it, because the thing about being a kid is that you have absolutely no opinion. The whole thing about the North, or any conflicts really, when you grow up or when you live through it, is that there's two sides, and one side has this opinion, the other side has that opinion. And the second you come at anything from one opinion, it already loses its credibility, because there's always two sides to a story. But when you're a kid, you don't even think like that. A kid just thinks from a kid's perspective, which is not making any judgments at all, really, just describing what's going on. And I thought, well, I can do that. And being a kid's going to let me off the hook because it's coming from that viewpoint. I don't have to have an opinion on it.
The album came out in 2016, but when was it born?
It probably started around about 2013. Myself and Declan, we'd been in Germany. We had toured with the solo album over in Germany, which was the only place that album was released. And when we came back, it was like, okay, but this acoustic thing is good. Why don't we try and make a record that really has to work on two acoustic guitars? It has to work, but it can't sound too ordinary. So let's just lean in and sit down together with the two acoustic guitars day in, day out, and try and come up with something. But let's try and make sure that the stories are unique to us and our family. And I think at that point, at somewhere early on, I had the title going as Sugar Island. And very early on, we knew that should be the title of the album. And then we really had to just write enough songs that could carry that title off. We knew it was a great title. And we said, okay, well, let's write a shitload of songs. And ironically enough, I rang Sharon. Sharon, who at this point was really, we were firm friends at this point. And she said, well, are you going to invite me to write? And we told her, like, well, this is where we're going with it. And she said, well, I'd love to be involved. And I remember thinking, this is a good idea, because if you put someone who hasn't lived that experience, then, and we're writing together, I'll probably be coming out with lines and she'll be going, I don't understand that. What do you mean by that? Because it's not clear enough to someone who's not from here. Turned out to be the case. And she was fantastic on that record. Like there's certain things that she really brought to that record. And it was an awful lot of fun. We wrote a lot of that record in my place in Carlingford. She came over in various pits, but we always had a lot of stuff for her. When she came over, in many cases, we had the title of the song, we had the verse and the chorus, or the verse and the bridge. And she would start off by critiquing where we were and then build on it. And in some cases, like in the case of Sugar Island, it's really, she came up with a phenomenal melody for the chorus when we had a great verse, but we didn't have the melody of the chorus.
Dear Jane, I know a lot of things have changed, but do you recall crossing the river to be together? These days, it's just like a movie that plays on in my mind. I want to call you, I want to tell you I'm still not over how the wind tore up your hair, how you looked just standing there on the day I left you crying on the bridge at Sugar Island. We said I'd take it back, but it's way too late for that. This is me apologizing for the day at Sugar Island. I was young, of all of the things I have done, that I most regret, it's that moment.
It was a great combination of people. And then we had Enda was the other, if you want to call it the four of us, then Enda was the fourth person. He wasn't involved. So the song like River Flows, where we just go up to his studio and sort of get a good vibe going. And so there's certain songs that we wrote with Enda, and there's certain songs that we wrote with Sharon. And then in a couple of cases, like Going South, which was ended up being the big song, one of the big songs, we wrote that on our own. So that was just me and Declan. That was the last song that we wrote. I remember Declan saying, we need one more song. To make this theme convincing, we need one more big song. And I had the title Going South, and I knew it was a great title, you know, and I knew the idea was great. You know, the idea of going south on your holiday. It was just a riff of Declan's that I had loved for like 10 years. And I said, I'm going to write over this riff, and we'll get there. And it was great.
It's a very clever sound. There's a nice, your foot is tapping. There's a nice kind of, there's a gorgeous shuffle to it. It moves along really, really nice. The lyrics are amazing. I can picture what it was like to be in that car in the good old days of people puffing their cigarettes and no seatbelts.
yeah. I mean, it was one where I had the responsibility for the lyrics. I must have written about 5 or 6 different verses. I think I had the first verse, and I knew that was on about the puffing, and I knew it was great. And then it was like, okay, now, and then I'd have a couple, and they'd get shot down, and also the song. The thing that you're saying about the shuffle and the groove bit is what's good about it. But I'm not going to say not so good, but the thing that works against it is that it basically doesn't move off that groove for the whole song. So you're trying to create a song out of what is in effect a groove. And I have to hand it to Declan and Enda, because while I was working on the lyrics, they were trying to put the track together, and there's a lot on that track. Enda's playing the bongos, and then he had like a bass lines going on. I try and build the track, you know, to try and build the track. And I remember came in one time, I think I was away for, this always happens with me, when I go away and I come back, and Declan and Enda have created something that it's like, Jesus, that's fantastic, you know. And I think it lasted for about 10 minutes, mind you, but it was like, it was great, and I probably had verses in it that wasn't. But the thing that was great about that song was that somewhere about and the album wasn't even finished, and Declan has said, you know, we have footage from cine footage of us from that time, you know, going across the border, and he went through it and got it digitized, and like Dad and Mum were way ahead of their time. They had this old cine camera back in the late 60s. It looks amazing, you know. There was no sound on it, but as kids, every sort of maybe twice a year, Christmas and maybe some other big event, Dad would get all the kids into the living room, and he had this wee projector, which is about the size of a big screen TV, that you'd unfurl, you know, and all the kids, the lights would be out, and you'd just hear that wonderful sound of the tape on the 2 reels spinning around, and the camera just reflecting the cine footage. And we would be mesmerized as kids, you know, at these images. And suddenly there I was, you know, in my 50s, looking at these images again, but this time we were tying it into a song that was from that time, about being that age, with pictures of us at that age. And the combination of all of that was very exciting for us. We knew, oh no, we're onto something here. This is a lot. We had the song, we had the production, we had a good concept, and we had moving images to beat the band.
I wonder, did your father's interest in his little home camera and everything else, did that inspire Declan? Because I'm not sure if a lot of people know, but a lot of your videos, Declan is at the controls, isn't he?
Yeah, he is the patience of a saint when it comes to making videos. He's always been interested in it. I've been interested as well, but he's got technical ability, which I have none, and I've no patience to acquire it either. So so he put together like it was hours and hours. There'd be weddings and there'd be like this stuff wasn't chronological. You had to dig it out. It was like mining for gold. You'd literally get, a wee bit of us, on a beach, and then it would move on to some uncle getting married somewhere, but a grandmother doing something. So he really had to go through hours and hours of stuff to get footage, and then he had to color it up, and actually one of the images ended up being the front cover of the album, which was basically us in a car, and even that he had to do work on because our granny was in the car, and it just wasn't very rock and roll. Declan had to surgically remove her from one of the seats, you know what I mean, and in the car to make the whole thing look a bit more rock and roll.
So poor granny was left at the border, was she?
She was ceremoniously extricated from the vehicle.
Counting every car behind us in the line, waiting at the checkpoint, marking time, rolling down the window so I don't have to share, cigarette smoke hanging in the air. On a journey going south in the height of the summer, we are leaving the parades, pipers and drummers, as the radio plays in the summertime. I wanna sing along, but I just know the first line. Over by the trees, there's soldiers hiding, faces painted green and black. Sitting next to me, my brother's crying, but there's no turning back on a journey going south.
And your dad comes into this album again. Now, the only reason I know this is because I've heard you sing it at the gigs on Just a Drop.
Oh, yeah. Dad was more interested in this album than most of the other albums we were doing because he was in it, and he was getting a kick out of being in it. We'd come up and show him some of the footage, and I think he liked the images. I'm not sure just how interested in the music he was. If it wasn't up tempo, Dad was like not interested. If this sort of irony that people, when they get older, they just want to hear placid, quiet, classical music. Not our dad. Like our dad was like, life's short. I don't have a lot of patience here. I don't want to hear dreary. Let's hear something where you can tap your feet. And he loved Johnny Cash. Declan came up with a riff one day when it was the two of us, as usual. We were sitting down, and in a lot of cases, because you're writing with two acoustic guitars, certainly for me, what I was looking for from Declan and myself was a riff or a rhythm that didn't suggest a couple of ballad singers. I wanted something that actually had its own internal groove that didn't necessarily need a bass and drums to give you a sense of sort of rhythm. The rhythm was in the guitar part. And Declan and I think, came up with, mainly Declan came up with this sort of dynamic part. And at some point I said, that sounds a bit like Johnny Cash, isn't it? So then I started playing a sort of that sort of Johnny Cash's bass player and drummer would have this sort of wee shuffle. And I tried to sort of mimic it on my guitar, not really playing any notes, while Declan sort of twanged away. And I said, I'm going to write a song in the spirit of Johnny Cash, and I thought that's going to love this. This is the sort of thing my dad would love. So I had the title, and I had the riff, and I had some of the words. I think I did have the title. And I said, let's get Sharon involved. So Sharon sort of heard it and thought, yeah, it sort of could be. Johnny Cash is a country songwriter. And I said, well, I don't want to sound country now. Let's try and make it not country. And she said, well, what if we try and make it sort of gospel-y? And I said, oh, yeah, now we're talking. And then she had this, each of us is just a drop together, we're an ocean. Or no, I think I had that. Sorry, I had that. I had each of us is just a drop together, we're an ocean. And I brought it to her. I said, look, you're going to love this. Each of us just a drop together, we're an ocean. What about making it gospel-y? And then Sharon wrote backwards from that. A lot of the images in the verses were related to that. So the three of us banged that one out, and then we took it to Daddy and said, Dad, you're finally going to love a four of a song, because it sounds just like Johnny Cash, and we know you like Johnny Cash, The story that I tell is actually the story that Daddy improved. So the story I originally told, which was the true story, which was that we played the song and we said when the record was finished, Daddy, you're going to love this one. Sounds just like Johnny Cash. Played him the song, and he said, that doesn't sound like Johnny Cash, right? And so I started telling this story at shows, and it got a good laugh. But the story I told was he sat Daddy down, gave him a glass of his favourite whiskey, played him the song, and said, sounds like just like Johnny Cash. And he said, what does sound like Johnny Cash? About a year later, Dad was in hospital. A year after we sat him down and played him that song, he was in hospital. He only had a couple more years, unfortunately, but after that. But he was in a hospital bed, and I thought I would cheer him up, and I'd say, I tell a story. I name check you at the, because some of our audience knew that Daddy loved a whiskey. He loved a whiskey. In fact, he loved going to our gigs because everybody just kept buying him whiskey. The music was irrelevant, He was like, couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. It was like he never had to put his hand in his pocket. And I said, I tell a story about get the laugh. I tell a story that basically, about playing you just a drop, and you saying it didn't sound like Johnny Cash at all. I was sitting there with a whiskey, and he said, oh, you're missing a trick. I said, really? He said, yeah. You should say. I said, Dad, you're going to love this song. It sounds just like Johnny Cash. I play it to you. You sip away at the whiskey. And then I say to you, Dad, what do you think? Does it sound like Johnny Cash? And you look up at me and you go, more whiskey. And when he said it, I actually laughed. I thought, that is better. That's better. And anytime I play that song, I tell that story, and I think of Dad having a laugh, up in the clouds, thinking, that not only am I name checking him, but that he, as usual, has improved my story.
You could see me bending, I was just about to break on my lonely road to Jericho, suffering in silence, carrying all the weight, was never going to get to where I had to go. I was dying for a drink of water, but I was just too proud to ask. When you came along, you filled my glass. No fun doing it on your own. Each of us is just a drop. Together we're an ocean. No fun doing it all alone. Each of us is just a drop. Yeah. Each of us is just a drop. Wanna make a difference, but you don't know where to start. And any gift you give is still not enough. No, don't underestimate the power of one hand. That's all it takes to hold a loving cup.
Well, they live on inside you, and I know as we're recording, it was close enough to your dad's anniversary, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was yesterday. Funny enough, he liked a specific whiskey, a Black Bush. Yeah. And so anytime I'll order a whiskey, the one whiskey, and so it has to be Black Bush. And then it's like I'm toasting him every time I order it, because I don't really like whiskey.
Yeah, so he's killing you from the grave.
Yes, that's it. So that's it.
Yeah. But what's your dad's name?
Jerry. He was known as Jerry, but Jared Murphy. And he would have been, God, what would he be now? He'd be Yeah, he'd be 92. He made it to 88. So he had a pretty solid innings, you know. But he loved music. He loved singing. I think that he enjoyed the fact that we became this act that you could see in theatres, really.
Well, for the listeners who may not have heard the previous episode, which is the making of Walk With Me, they'll hear a really lovely story about your dad who was determined to get in on the recording action with you.
Oh yeah, yeah, Dad, that's right. On the previous album, Dad liked music so much that he actually thought that he could have and should have been paid for any renditions he made. So he thought that when he went into a recording studio, that it was going to be like a cross between Perry Como and Frank Sinatra. I think he was confused and dismayed when it was played back to him. But he had no experience, you know, so, but that was some crack, but he had a lovely voice. So, you know, and I remember when we were bringing him, he'd say, God, you got some mileage out of that cine film, you know. I think we'd played him Going South, the song, and instead of commenting on the song, you know, he didn't say like, I like the song. He just went, well, you got some mileage out of that cine footage, you know. Like that. At least there's something interesting in this 3 minutes that you put me through.
Yeah, but maybe there's a bonus track to be released sometime with that special version with your dad, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, you know, it really made me. I felt like, where is it? I think my brother has it. That CD. I don't have a copy. I'm ripping that I don't have a copy.
Another song with a lovely shuffle to it is Little Things.
Yeah, again, that is one of those. Again, that's a riff song where, you know, it's that thing. You're on two acoustic guitars, but our background is sort of, I don't know, you call it rock, pop, more than folk. That's really where our interest lies, I think. And we wanted grooves. We thought, even if we may not have a rhythm section on stage, but we want our music to groove. And this was a good one. Declan had created a good riff. And I think that was me and Declan wrote that one. We wrote over the top of that. And this was really for us, this was us learning how to make two guitars sound bigger than two guitars. That's really what you were trying to do. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the audience that we had been used to seeing 4 people on the stage or 5 people on the stage. And we were, you know, now saying the 4 of us is not only is it 2 people making the records, but it's 2 people that are performing the records. And we didn't want it to suddenly turn into an album of, you know, ballads. So we wanted the songs to have a groove. So yeah, we were learning a lot of things. You know, the video stuff really started taking form for us because lots of things were happening with technology. Everything was becoming a lot easier. So the video for that song was shot by Declan now it wasn't very, shouldn't be advertising this, but we were touring Germany at the time, and I was driving, and we had recorded the song, and Declan said, I'm going to play the song on the speakers here, and you just sing along. And I'm going to record it on the iPhone, but sped the whole music up. So he put it was sped up by about 4. So then I had to sing it in a chipmunk type style. And then when he took it back to the editing, Pro Tools, whatever you call it, Final Cut Pro, then he could slow the slow everything down. So whenever the music was at the right speed, and I was singing at the right speed, everything that was happening around me was in slow motion. So all the traffic coming from different directions, and it had that sort of a druggy feel, you know. And then he went to LA for a bit and shot some stuff there, and they mixed the 2 of them, and then we had a what I think is a really good video for that song as well. So there was a lot of things that, we didn't have videos for Fingerprints. We didn't have videos for Heaven and Earth. So a band that had started off being really about video and music had sort of somewhere along the line abandoned the videos just because it was too expensive, costly, and there wasn't enough places to show them. But now the internet had arrived. There was loads of places to show them. Your phone was a camera. I mean, it was all good. I mean, that's the thing about us generally, is that the way everything's worked with music and the way everything's worked with technology, for us, it's all been good news. Like, we're in a better position today now, as far as we're concerned, than we ever were, because we get to control everything. The cost of making everything has dramatically dropped. The cost of distribution has disappeared. And then, people are going, yeah, but how do you earn money out of it? Well, it's very simple. Once you have an audience, there's any number of ways to monetize that. If you do good stuff, it's easier than it's ever been to acquire an audience, because you have the tools to get it out there and people will see it. And if they like it, then you just try and get them to enter your world. And once they're in your world, then at that point, it's like the Grateful Dead model, whereas in the old ways, really, I just remember you spent lots and lots of money, like 10 grand to make a video in 1999 was like, what are you going to make for that? When we made Mary, the budget was 30 grand sterling for 1 day shoot, 60 grand for a 2 day shoot. That's a band that hadn't had a global hit at that point.
Yeah, so no one makes money here.
Yeah. Whereas now, what you need is a good idea.
Yeah.
And actually, even then, what you needed was a good idea.
Yeah, true. But we didn't have iPhones then.
No. So Sugar Island, I think, really was where suddenly a lot of things crystallized. I think if you would say the four of us, there's been lots of different versions of the four of us, but this is the one that we're now living. This is the one that we've sort of we said, oh, this is it. This is it. This felt really comfortable. Everything about it felt good.
When it comes to recording, and, on some of the tracks, you can hear some keyboard coming in and maybe there's someone on the drums. Are you very reluctant to introduce other instruments at the recording process, for the simple reason that when you go live, you don't have the keyboard player and you don't have the drummer? And does that rule out particular songs? Like, is there another bank of songs that you're deciding, great song, but we can never do it live, so let's not put it on an album?
Not really. I mean, I think that the way we write, the way we make records is essentially, it works backwards from the way we write, and the way we write is with two acoustic guitars. So when you start with two acoustic guitars and you don't really move, we don't take it up to we don't take it into a studio environment until we are really, really happy with the two acoustic guitar parts. And if we're really happy with the two acoustic guitar parts, then we don't want anything that's going to drown those acoustic guitar parts. Those two acoustic guitar parts have to be the two loudest things on the record, really. It's an unusual thing, but normally the foundation of a record is the rhythm section, I suppose. Either that, or you write on an acoustic and then you go into a rehearsal room or whatever with a band and it becomes something a lot bigger. Whereas with us, we spend a lot of time on those two acoustic guitars trying to make sure that the parts interlock with each other. And once that happens, then we're working backwards from that. So you need whoever's playing on it has to understand that the acoustic guitars are running the show in the songs. So no, we never really worry too much about that. Now, funny enough, making the new record, Crescent Nights, that record was slightly different in that instead of writing and going up to enders to finish them off, and then basically most of the songs on that record were written with Enda in the studio, and therefore they are harder to pull off. Like this new record, there's more stuff going on than there certainly was on anything, on Sugar Island. It's a bigger sounding record. But again, it's that thing. You just want to you react to the record you previously made. You go, okay, well, we did that. Now let's not worry about the rhythm this time. Let's start with the rhythm. Like, you do whatever you want, and we'll make it work. But no, yeah, we definitely we're very much of the opinion that I think we were very clear that nothing should overpower the acoustics. Yeah, so even there's no drums. The drums aren't running the show in any of the songs on this record.
You're working hard, starting early too. That trouser suit looks like it's wearing you. Get in your car, work 10 hours straight. Don't get home till it's far too late. Cause and effect, why is it so hard to see what ties you up and what can set you free? What you control and what is meant to be. Sometimes you have to take it slow. You move too fast, you miss the show. The moment's gone before you know. The kiss, the smile, the hand you hold. These are the things our life is made of. The little things our life is made of. These are the things our life is made of.
River Flows is a gorgeous track. The clever, clever lyrics. Beautiful, beautiful song. Beautiful idea.
On the record, that is, I have to give the credit to Enda. We were writing, and Enda he had to try and create a sort of a writing environment. He had set it up that it was all sort of live in the studio, and you could hear yourselves through the speakers. It ended up coming up all this ambient stuff. And when we were finished it, I thought, yeah, it's all right. It's a bit woolly, because I've been spending all this time writing really specific songs, and this song was sort of like ethereal and I remember driving home, and Enda's studio was 3 hours away from us. So it was a fucking drive, I drove home, and been home for a few hours, and I got a phone call, and it was late that night, and it was from Enda. And he says, I've sent you something. I said, what? He said, I've sent you something. And he had spent, from when we left the studio, he had basically spent the next 7 hours trying to do a mix of all these elements. And it was like a different song, it was really fantastic. And then after the album was finished, we ended up, our agent knew a guy who looked after a producer called Peter Walsh. Peter Walsh was the producer of one of the formative albums of my youth, which was New Gold Dream by Simple Minds. I loved that album when I was a kid. And Peter got involved, and he said he would do remixes of anything. And I asked him, well, if you had a choice of any song on the album to remix, what song would you choose? And he thought for a minute, and then he said, River Flows. And he did a remix of that song that was so good that when we did the vinyl recording of it, first of all, that remix became the single, but suddenly it sounded like a single. And then it sounded like a single, and when we were just doing vinyl, we put the remix of it on the vinyl. And also Declan, was getting into all this video world, and Declan said, okay, Declan and Anne and myself were sitting down and saying, okay, we'd released our first single. He said, what's the next single? He said, what about River Flows? And I said, is that singly, is it? And I went, oh, no, it's got something. And I said, well, yeah, it does. And I said, Declan, what are you looking at? And Declan said, I'm trying to figure out an idea for the video. And I said, right, okay. So, typical Declan. So I'm thinking that he'd be thinking of like rivers and sea and, all that sort of crack, lots of drone stuff. And instead of that, Declan's looking for underwater footage. So he got in touch with this guy who films the Liffey, who sort of does underwater swimming in the Liffey. There's not too much clarity in there, but he got in touch with him and they did a deal for some footage of in the Liffey, and then Declan superimposed it with this cine film of us playing, as kids. And then another a fantastic video guy, a fan of the bands, used to go to all our shows, but he does fantastic drone stuff. And this guy called, from your neck of the woods, called Morris Supple. And Morris Supple, he shot stuff for Aer Lingus and, lots of stuff on the coast of Ireland, just these panoramic shots. And the video ended up being a mixture of Morris's footage, because, Morris had got in touch with us, actually, to say that he loved river flows and he wanted to use it for some sort of a pitch that he was making to Aer Lingus for the tourist board with some drone footage that he'd done. And we said, let's have a look at the drone footage. And when we saw it mixed with the song, we said, can we use that as the single? So it ended up being this mixture of that and the footage of the underwater footage. And for me, suddenly it felt like back in the old days before we had a record deal and all that, when we're making these videos and we're creating these tracks. And I felt like, the initial idea I had of the four of us, and Declan probably too, was this sort of like creative audio visual thing where you're sort of over everything, because we both love film as nearly as much as we love music. And the idea that the technology had moved on to the point where we were back to where we were when we did those wee videos that got us the deals. It was us doing the videos. We're creating the songs and then shooting the videos for the songs. And the whole thing seemed really, really exciting. So it was that whole record, I think, for us, it just gave us a real shot in the arm at a pretty crucial time, really.
It's the vinyl version of that song that I've been listening to. And
that's the remix.
Quite interestingly, I was listening to it late Saturday night, and of course, with vinyl, you have to change the damn thing every 20 minutes, or you have to turn the side. And I was having a whiskey, and Just a Drop is the first track on side 2. Are you conscious of now, when you're, pushing out the record, deciding on the sequence of the songs, are you conscious now that a lot of people are listening on vinyl and there will be a song to finish side A and a song to open side B?
Yeah, we are conscious of it, yeah. We are. Particularly Declan, but more so than me. Declan's it'd be more about that and the end of the record. I'm always about the first 4 songs. That's my paranoia, So I normally don't mind. Once the first 4 songs are done, I'm pretty easy to please, unless somebody's got a really bad idea.
Hurry up before it gets too late. This could be our chance to escape. Run across the bridge and down below. Or we can lie and watch the water flow. Roll on. Catch a perfect moment before it's gone. Summer days don't ever last too long. Things will change, but this place stays the same. Something always pulls me back again. I know
But on the subject of the first four songs and technology and everything else, who had the MG in 1973 that wasn't very reliable? Or was that just clever lyrics?
Yeah, that's clever lyrics. And as usual, it was Sharon Vaughan's clever lyrics. There's an example of a song that just wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for Sharon, because we had the melody and we had the riff, the guitar riff and everything. It was one of those ones where she came up with the concept. She came up with the title and she wrote a lot of the words. And, it's because, I mean, she's, I hope she won't mind me saying, but she's older than I am. So she's
very old.
Well, yeah, she's very old, yeah. She was able to, look at that time in a way that, I wasn't, So it comes from the perspective of someone who's a bit older, which was a nice twist. Whereas all I was thinking about was writing from the perspective of someone who was young, and then she flipped it and wrote from the perspective of someone who was not now young, but wishes time would go back to that same period that I'm talking about when I was young. It was a bitch of a song to get right. Thought we kept doing mixes and remixes of it, and I think that's one of those songs that Declan and Enda like more than I do. The production of it. I was never totally convinced about the production of that song on the record, but they really like it. They like what I don't like about it. There's got a wee sort of shuffle, like a drummer who doesn't want to get too excited. I just want to give a kick in the ass. But that's what's good about it, But yeah, that was Sharon's. The MG was. Sharon said, I actually remember Sharon saying, name me a popular sports car from the time. That people would have been driving, here or in the UK. And
it had to be red, didn't it? The MGs. They just had to be.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that with cars, it's funny that people have mentioned that car. It's funny the way that some lines stick out in the song, and that AMG has been a line that people have repeated to me, and I've said I can't take any credit for it. It wasn't mine.
Had to give up all the things he loves the most. Has to step outside anytime he feels the urge to smoke. Didn't recognize the old lady on the bus as the Trinity Queen. He remembers she once was so beautiful. Rusted almost down to her wheels, covered up to keep the dust off a 65 MG. He went to take her out for a spin, but she don't wanna start, breaks his heart. He remembers she once was so beautiful. Yesterday's all gone.
And who's delivering the good bad news, Brendan? It's another clever, wordplay and everything else.
That's another Sharon. Goodbye.
Shakers almighty.
As soon as you use the word clever there, you can, that it's Sharon's normally involved somewhere in it. But yeah, that was her concept. And again, we weren't sure about putting that song on the record, to be honest with you, because it didn't really, thematically, it didn't fit with the rest of the record. But ultimately, we just ran out of time. And we thought, well, we like the song. And how long is it going to take us to write another song about, somewhere near Sugar Island? So we're just going to have to let it go and put that song on the record. But again, Enda Declan did a good job on building that track in the studio. But yeah, it's just about a guy who, he's looking to find he's heartbroken, and he's just looking for love in all the wrong places, but he's never going to find it because he isn't over the person who sort of left him, and I can sing those songs all day long. So I enjoy singing them. And on the record, it's probably good to shake it up a bit and not have every song necessarily, on the same subject.
What is it to lose? Only the hours from midnight to daybreak, looking for another you. It's good, bad news. I need a drink poured on the rocks I'm headed for. Bartender, please, don't let my glass run dry. I know the signs, these are the times things get dangerous. When I'm in this state of mind, what is it to lose? Only the hours from midnight to daybreak, looking for another you. It's good, bad news. Don't know her name.
Yeah. What in the name of God is Argenta?
It was a prison boat that was moored just in the water outside Belfast. And it was for Republican prisoners. The conditions were not great. And we had a relative who was on that boat. So, there's books written about it, and we were sort of curious. So for me, it was the idea that the family had been touched by the troubles in the generations before. This was 1936, 37, it was even before that. It was around the time of my mother's and my father's father. It was there. It was when they were, 19 and 20. So you just heard about it, but nobody really talked about it. And I just thought that this is an interesting, that we're writing the whole album really. A lot of it's about family, and a lot of it about is the family growing up in unusual circumstances, really, in this sort of historically unusual circumstances, but that it runs further back than my generation or the generation even of my parents. It's my parents' generation, so that's why that song's included. But it's, again, lyrically, it's sort of written. Yeah, I suppose if you didn't know what it's about, you go, what is it about? That's what it's about. It's about a boy on a prison ship.
Okay. Initially, I thought it was a colour, strangely enough.
Right. Yeah, well, look at the colour. But it's the name of the ship. If you Google the Argenta ship, there'll be any number of articles and historical stories about it.
There's lots of Four of Us fans now doing a quick Mr. Google and discovering something new for themselves.
Filthy water at my feet. Looks like this hell ship has sprung another leak. 16 days now, nothing to eat. Argenta, feel my blood getting colder. 18, I died, I'll make it older. Raised in troubles as a child. Wild. Someday I'll
And staying with the North, I presume like that, your parents, their understanding of the Troubles, they have a different version to your understanding of them. And to a generation that'll barely understand them, but it's still there. I presume they just kept that away from you.
Didn't really talk about it, you know? Didn't really talk about it. They had a belly full of it. We didn't want to talk about it. Certainly not at the time. The news would come on and we just wanted to switch it off. All these people talking, nobody doing anything that was helping the situation. It just seemed to be entrenched on both sides, and just a lot of people, getting hurt, and a lot of families losing loved ones. It was just, certainly as kids, you just wanted an escape. For me, you just, I see you go down to the stereo and put the headphones on. I could be anywhere I wanted to be. I could be in LA with the Beach Boys. It took me out of there. And certainly escape. Not that I wasn't enjoying my childhood. I was, but I didn't want to be defined by the situation that I found myself in as I wanted what all red-blooded teenage boys wanted. Adventure and fun, and music held a different place, I think, then. It was more the centre of people's lives, kids' lives, like that it is now. Everybody knew who was number one in the charts. Like everybody, like who's number one in the charts now? Like, not only do I not know, but my 15-year-old daughter doesn't know. And not only that, but there's like 500 charts. So it's like, everybody's number 5 or number 4 in some chart. It's not the same. Whereas then it really was football and music. I mean, that was it for the kids that I went to school with. There were sort of the people that are obsessed with football, and then there were the kids that were useless at football and obsessed with music. And there was some very lucky kids that were good and obsessed with both. I wasn't one of those. But I certainly knew all the music stuff inside out. So for me, that was like, how can I get into that world,
Yeah. And not only did we know who was number one, but it actually mattered. It was like following your football team. You wanted them to get to the top of the league, which was having a number one hit. And it was an insult. I know we were talking about the American elections and everything. For me, it's an insult to see Donald as the president, in exactly the same way that Gloria One Day at a Time was an insult to every music fan when she was number one for, 3 months on the trot. You're like, yeah, this is rigged. This is terrible. It's an outrage. Yeah.
But I mean, everybody was talking about it. Like, I mean, everybody knew who was on top of the pops. The next day we would be going, did you see this? Both good and bad. It really was. I went home. My school was close to where the house was, so I didn't stay in school for lunch. I would go home, but the main reason I went home wasn't to get lunch at home, or I'm afraid to say see my mum. It was I would get in and I would eat and I would go straight down to the record player so that I could have 25 minutes of listening to records that I was completely addicted to. And then once I got over that record, I'd go to the shop and buy another record and then play it till I'd basically worn it out. I learned more, I think, about song construction and what makes a song resonate through just hours and hours of listening super intently to music with headphones on. Like, I wasn't doing anything else. It wasn't like I see kids now and they've got music on in the background, but they're doing other stuff. And I'm listening to music. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting there listening to it and taking it all in. And I think a lot of that stuff just rubs off. Hometown on the Border was about the fact that music was so much of a release that basically I would go home at lunchtime and I would go straight to the bottom room and the stereo was on top of the piano, and I literally would just sit on the piano stool, put the headphones on, and that was me for 20 minutes every day, 5 days a week. I was just obsessed.
Children with guns, fatherless sons, hometown on the border. Soldiers walking the fields, tapping their heels, right up to your door. Nothing really out of the ordinary. Nothing really out of the ordinary. I fool myself, helps to keep you safe and insulated. Just ignore the facts and try to get creative to put the world in.
How did that High Wire Walker make his way into the album?
Well, that's a song about watching that. There was a thing on Netflix. It's the guy, you know, the guy who did the High Wire act between the Twin Towers. Have you seen that documentary?
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a fear of heights. Like, I don't like them. I don't understand them. So you'll see me, if I'm watching on Netflix, I'll be watching like, you know, the 10 Peaks or one of those things. God, I really don't get it, but I'm intrigued as to these people. It's like, so let me get this straight. You are going to spend the next 2 years of your life trying to get up this God-forsaken piece of rock for what? You know, I mean, I don't really understand it. But I mean, I admire it in a sort of a whacked out sort of way. And this guy was doing it just for the hell of it. And on the documentary, the guy that did Between the Twin Towers, the documentary was riveting. And I remember thinking, that's very like, it reminds me of when you go into the music business, certainly compared to my contemporaries, to a lot of people, it felt like I just got up and got on a high wire. You know what I mean? It's like, what is he doing? You know what I mean? It's like, where's this going? You know, even people who love you think in a year or two, he'll see the error of his ways or whatever, you know, and then he's going to have to, you know, come back down and enjoying the human, do a normal job, you know. It seems less like that now, because now anybody can put, you know, their songs together and put it up on Spotify and shoot a video and whatever. Back then, it was a sort of a statement of intent in the, you know, 80s, to, especially when you'd gone so far down the academic road as I had, which was, you know, practically everybody thought, well, he's going to be a lawyer. I mean, he's already spent years studying at university. And then suddenly to go in a complete tangent, you know, into what a lot of people view as a very uncertain and risky business. What I admire in people is people who burn the bridges behind them. I think, because that's what I did. I know that it's not easy to do. It's not like you sort of don't think about it when you're setting that bridge behind you. Like, you know what you're doing. Like, it's just like, there is no way back. You know, there is no way back. So it's a song about, you know, life's a risk anyway. So why not, you know, up the stakes?
Making me feel humble, up there without a net. Aren't you afraid you'll break your neck? I don't claim to understand why it is you do it. when death's a slip away. I wanna be that way. A crowd stands underneath a rain cloud, covering their eyes. Will he fall? Will he fly? High while you walk, is someone waiting for you while you're up in the air? Is she scared or don't you care? Does your blood run cold? Is that what you call courage?
And when you did decide to make that big decision to turn your back on all the college years, and I'm sure someone was writing checks for your college work, might a mother or a father said there'll be hell to pay if you give up that course or give up that career?
Yeah, actually, my dad was very good about it. You know, I sort of confided in my dad that I was not interested in law. And I think he was probably thinking about the money. He was going, why the hell are you in it then, you know? And I said, well, you know, I've got an idea, you know, I'm working on it. I'll let you know, and I'll let you know if it pans out, you know. And, oh, you know, you're making a reference to Hell to Pay, the other song on the record.
Yeah.
Well, that song's not on the theme, but it was one of those songs, a bit like Good Bad News, where when you're writing an album, it's always a mistake, I think, to really go, thou shalt not write any songs that aren't in keeping with the theme of the record. It's not the way it works as a songwriter. You wake up one morning and an idea pops into your head, and it's a mistake to go, I won't write that song because, so you just keep writing them and hoping that every third or fourth one might be on theme. But this one was, I had the title, Hell to Pay. And I was looking for a song to hang it on. And then I came up with this chord progression. And the chord progression, I went Hell to Pay. But I didn't have the idea about, then the idea came to me of this guy who's on death's row. And the priest comes in to give him the sort of last rites before, and he basically tells him that, you know, to go because he knows it's too late for him. He doesn't believe anyway, and he doesn't believe in heaven, and he thinks if he's going anywhere, you know, he's going to have to pay the price. That, you know, talking to the priest isn't going to solve his problem, you know. So he just tells him that. That's not going to, you know, if he gets to the pearly gates, he's still going to be turned away, regardless of what hocus pocus the priest sort of says. So we just tell him, I tell you what, Father, just be on your way, you know. So it was the idea of someone who's just refusing that the last charity of a priest. It was just because the chords they had this sort of a dark undercurrent to them. And I was quite impressed with the chords. I got quite far down the road of the chords before I went to Declan, which is unusual for me. You know, so I sort of nearly had it. The song was practically there by the time I took it down to Declan. And then we both finished it off. And it was like, you know, we had a pool of these songs like Good Bad News and Hell to Pay and River Flows that we said, okay, well, you know, let's work. And all the songs that didn't make the record. And then, but leading the charge were these songs that reflected our own story. At that point, we knew we had enough of those songs to wrap it up in a bow with the title Sugar Island and put the shot of the family on the cover and really tell people that this is essentially what the record is. The record is really sort of like essentially a lot of the songs are sort of autobiographical, you know. It was really a sort of a great experience, and I still love the record. And I really think that Sharon, we couldn't have made it without Sharon, and we couldn't have made it without Enda. They were great, and myself and Declan put the work in to make the guitar parts work, and every time we play the songs from that record on stage, I can feel the work that was done on them, you know, both lyrically and on the melodies and on the chords. You can take them right back down to acoustic guitars and they still work.
to my prison cell. Have you come to feed the animal with words of comfort and forgiveness? If I confess to you, tell me what good would it do to ease my guilty conscience? Hey, Father, I've been trying to pray, but I got a feeling that nothing's gonna wash my sins away.
And maybe you couldn't have made that record without Newry. And my image, the thing that comes to my head every time I think about that album, is in the opening track, Bird's Eye View. It kind of brings a smile to my face a little bit, because I can imagine you and the brothers, you've been told to go to bed, and you're up in the pajamas, and you have the popcorn out, and you're looking at your 3D TV, which is basically your bedroom window, at the action that's in front of you, and it's all a big game.
Yeah, that's totally right. You know, and poor mum and dad, you know, desperately trying to, you see, that's it. They don't want to scare us. They don't want to frighten us by telling us exactly how close we are to the sort of center of the action. But at that age, it's like watching a movie. Looking back on it, they were all dangerously close. You're looking on it like as if you're watching a movie on Netflix, but it's not a movie. And we didn't realize that, but our mum and dad, they knew exactly. I mean, really, they are the heroes, the mums and dads of that period for both ourselves and for a lot of the friends that I grew up with. It was very, very tough for them. Now, as a parent myself, the idea that every day you're trying to figure out how to protect your family with all that going on around you is pretty inconceivable to me today.
I want to finish on something, but before we do that, I want to ask you about you and your singing. And, you know, from the very, very first album, Songs for the Tempted, there's a very, very different voice there. You've got the Newry, Northern Ireland thing, obviously with your own vocal tones and everything else. Yeah, well, no one sings like you.
Okay.
It is so distinctive, and that is a mixture, I guess, of your own vocal tone and the accent and all the stuff you've listened to down through the years. When did you realise I've got a good voice and I can hold a note in the same way that other people can't? And what brought me to that thought is what you were saying about your father the last day and him not having that good voice and not realising it.
There's a couple of things. First thing I'll say is to go back just to that bunk bed. I was in the top bunk bed and my brother was in the bottom bunk bed. And every night I would sing when I was a kid, like when I was like, you know, I must have been 6, 7 or 8 or whatever. And I was singing and it drove my brother, who was in the bottom bunk, mad because he was trying to sleep and I'd be singing away. And he actually started doing a thing where, you know, you would have thought that he had a condition. He started banging his head off the pillows in a sort of a rhythm, not to the rhythm of my singing, just as in a, I am going to drown out the sound of my brother's endless singing by just banging my head off the pillow. He would have thought there was something wrong with him. And but the combination of him banging his head off the pillow in the bottom and then me singing at the top. So Dad and Mum, every night, it seemed to me, would stand at the bottom of the stairs and go, keep it down now, quiet now, stop that singing, go to sleep. I remember that. I just had this compunction, and my brother would say it as well. From as long as I can remember, I loved the feeling that singing gave me. I just loved what it did to, it's like breathing. It's just like, it's like or smiling, it makes me feel good the same way. You know, when if you smile, if you don't, even if you don't feel like smiling, you smile, it makes you happy because, you know, it just does. But it's the same with singing. Singing makes me happy, and I can't really figure out why. And then by the time when I got to secondary school, around about the age of about 14, I remember we had a teacher who was, they were putting together a concert for the school. And there's a song called Brennan on the Moor. Started Brennan on the Moor, Brennan on the Moor, bold, brave, and dotted stood young Brennan on the Moor. There was a choir of guys that were supposed to sing it, but there was 3 guys at the front. This was out of the whole, you know, 30 in a class, 30 by 4. That's 120 kids. They're looking for probably 12 guys to sing at the back and 3 guys to sing at the front. And the guy went around all the class. He got everybody to sing it. He'd walk, move between the desks and lean in and listen to each person as they sang the song. And he'd tap the shoulder of the person that, it was going to be, they had their 12 that was going to be in the top 3. And he tapped my shoulder. Then at that point, I thought, I knew I had a good voice. You know what I mean? I loved singing. I wanted to be a good singer because I loved singers. And now I'd been tapped. The hand of God in the form of my teacher had tapped me on the shoulder. He was like sort of the arty teacher. So as in this guy could hold a tune. So there was me. I was one of the 3. And at that point, I was pretty much unstoppable. As in, like, from that point onwards, I was going to be the lead singer in a band, you know. And ultimately, I had to end up convincing my brothers to let me be the lead singer in their band because everybody wants to be the lead singer. Well,
that's interesting, though. That was confirmation, wasn't it? External confirmation that...
Totally. Yeah. And it was, I thought it anyway, but that was all I needed from that point. And then I think that was good for me because at that point, I never felt that I had to affect my voice or to sing in another type of voice or put on a voice. I always had confidence in the way I actually just naturally sang, but I never had any lessons or did any of that. And the other thing was then I didn't learn to sing really in front of an audience. I really developed what you call a studio technique pretty early on because we were doing those demos with headphones on. And so the studio felt, and it's a bit like the difference between singing in a studio and singing on a stage is pretty similar, I would imagine, to the difference between acting on a stage and acting in a film. Sometimes if you want to convey emotion in the studio, you don't have to go over the top to do it. You know, you can sound defeated pretty subtly, and sometimes that's more believable than if you're going at lengths to sound. It's an interesting thing because as a singer, all I've ever believed is when I listen to any singer, I don't care if he can sing or not. I just want to, the question is, do I believe him? Do I believe the singer? You know, whether he can sing. There's a lot of singers who are fantastic singers who I don't believe when I hear them sing. I can hear them listening to their own voice when they're singing, as opposed to telling the story of the song. But the singers that I love are, for the most part, the singers who inhabit the narrative of the song.
That's an amazing insight into the young lad up on his bunk bed singing away and the father at the bottom of the stairs telling you to hold up. And they probably knew you had a good voice. They knew that, I'm sure, and thought,
yeah,
that boy is special. That boy is special. Yeah. So to wrap up tonight's recording, which is the very last album before your new album, Crescent Nights, do you want to pick a song to sign us out?
Yeah, I think I'll, after the last 2 stories, I gotta pick the song where I'm on the bunk bed. So, which is the opening track. We're talking about Bird's Eye View, which is the view I had from the top of that bunk bed, looking out on the grand old town in Newry.
Brendan, thank you so much. Take it easy.
Cheers, Greg.
Baptism of fire, Smoky night in a northern town. See the sky crack open, blades come hovering down, shooting lightning bolts down an empty street. Daddy shouts now, go to sleep. I got a bird's eye view up on the hill tonight. In a bird's eye view, it's only a string of lights, just a stone's throw from my home to the edges of the danger zone. I got a bird's eye view up on the hill tonight. My bunk bed at the window, gunfire and a siren screams, strange kind of music, the background to a young boy's dream. They're shooting lightning bolts down an empty street, and I can't help but take a peek. I got a bird's eye view up on the hill tonight. Boy's eye view, it's only a string of lights, just a stone's throw from my home to the edges of the danger zone. I got a bird's eye view up on the hill tonight. Baptism of fire, smoky night in the northern town. See the sky crack open, blades come hovering down, and I got a bird's eye view. I got a bird's eye view up on the hill tonight. Boy's eye view, it's only a string of lights, just a stone's throw from my home to the edges of the danger zone. I got a bird's eye view, I got a bird's eye view.
Thank you for listening to the Please Do Something podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, just send an email to brianmurphy@new